how's it going? It's Sam Frost here, back with some more digital marketing advice. Now in today's video I want to discuss why I think that fundamentally Google's own algorithm is to blame for the need for this helpful content update that's being rolled out at the time of recording this video, which is sort of late August 2022. So you've probably seen by now that Google is rolling out this algorithm update that's supposed to effectively penalize content that's written first and foremost for search engines and reward content that's more creative for human readers and audiences, which is great. But fundamentally, it's Google's own algorithm that's created the situation where this has happened in the first place. So if we step back and think from a Google user perspective, a searcher's perspective, at least from where I'm sat, Google search results have definitely become worse in recent years. So trying to find information is becoming harder and harder, especially as someone who knows typically if I hit a website that's, very much like just created for SEO purposes, I can usually spot things, really heavy optimization of content, certain sort of page layouts and all those kind of things tend to indicate that, hey, this is a site that's created first and foremost to try and get rankings rather than necessarily deliver much value. The problem is that Google has spent a very long time rewarding these exact kind of sites, so everyone's been forced to play this game, and now all of a sudden the rules of the game are supposedly being changed. That's really the big issue. You've probably heard that saying, don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, Google's created this game that's forced basically anyone who wants to get traffic from Google down a certain path, and now they're pulling a switcheroo on everybody and saying, well, actually, we don't necessarily like how we told you to play the game. Not even necessarily how they told you to play the game, how you had to play the game in order to get ahead. So, the rules said one thing, but in order to really get ahead, you had to do something else. And a great example of this is, the food niche or sort of recipes. So if you've Googled a recipe, you've probably experienced the same frustration I have. You want to make something for dinner, you spend longer reading the introduction to the recipe than it takes you to cook the dinner. And why have food bloggers and so on had to do this? Well, they've had to do this because basically in order to rank their recipes, they've had to give all this crazy context rather than just listing out, here are the ingredients, here's the process you need to follow. Now, Google is saying with this new helpful content update, we don't care about content length, it's never been an issue for us. Well, if that's the case, why have they typically rewarded or created a scenario where it at least feels like that longer content has been rewarded, which has driven everyone in a certain path? And I think fundamentally this boils down to a real key issue with Google's algorithm, and I don't see how they'll ever be able to solve it, which is Google's algorithm doesn't do an amazing job at actually finding quality content. What it does is a good job at finding content that I guess looks like it answers a question or solves a problem, but it isn't necessarily going to be the best content in terms of actually providing really good insight or advice or anything like that, because oftentimes the best content from a end user, a human user's perspective, is not the best content from Google's perspective, because typically speaking, subject matter experts are often not that good at the SEO and digital marketing side of things. And this is why you reach this weird sort of paradox or situation where, if I take my own Google search habits, for example, I spend a lot more time now searching on forums using site search or searching on places like Reddit on niche subreddits for answers to questions and solutions to problems, because the people who are creating content there, they're often more knowledgeable than the person who is, hiring an army of outsourced writers to create a niche authority site to monetize it with display advertising and affiliate links. I'll put my hand up and say I've been guilty of doing this in the past as well, so it's not like I'm trying to, walk out of this totally blameless. This is something I've done for a long time, although I do try to actually create good quality sites, but that's an aside. The issue here is really this fundamental sort of, almost unsolvable problem within the algorithm, which is how does Google really get to the bottom of what is good content or not? Because if you take almost any search out there, there's thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of possible results. And so I think what will probably happen with this helpful content update is maybe there will be some low-hanging fruit Google can pick away, like clearly sort of AI created content sites that have no value whatsoever because there's certain footprints. Maybe sites where it's very obvious that everything's been done first and foremost for SEO because they're over-optimized to the point that no sort of genuine site would do this. But beyond that, is Google really going to be able to do a better job at identifying genuinely the best quality information? So someone who is a bona fide subject matter expert on a specific topic, writing on some little blog they've got where they don't have any understanding of SEO and they just post basically from a purely altruistic perspective because they want to share their expertise. or they're doing so on forums or Reddit or whatever the case may be, is Google's algorithm, short of doing some sort of blanket, process like making forum posts and Reddit posts and so on show up higher, is there really going to be a way for them to actually peel back the layers and say, well, is this the best content on that particular topic or not? Or is what Google's going to do perhaps more likely to be something that looks like actions being taken against this, unending sea of derivative, paraphrased content that exists out there that doesn't really add any value? And is it going to be something like rewarding, say, big authority sites, sites like Forbes that show up on the first page of Google for everything? Not necessarily because their content is great, but because Google, knows the brand is trusted, and so basically they can get away with showing that content because all they need to be able to do if you search a question or try to get a solution to a problem is give you something that's plausibly good enough in response. And so you're more likely probably to trust a brand like Forbes because at the end of the day, that brand, you've heard it before. So just something to think about here. It's not really, any great advice in this. I'm just keen to hear your take, basically. Do you think that Google can solve this fundamental challenge of their algorithm, which is that there's too much content that actually exists for just about every topic out there? It's very hard for Google to actually identify the best quality content outside of maybe places like, or niches like health, for example, where they look at places like WebMD because they've got genuine medical experts writing for them. Obviously, there are these factors like, EAT scores and, author profiles and all those kind of things, but a lot of that stuff can be faked to some extent as well. It's that genuine, what is the best quality content for this particular topic issue that's not particularly easy to resolve. So I'd be keen to hear what your take is. Please do leave a comment below, and I'll be doing more content on the helpful content algorithm once it's finished rolling out.